Hello and welcome to the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. We bring you interviews from people who have conquered the trickiest of health challenges using the functional diagnostic nutrition philosophy and similar healing modalities. You're going to hear from experts who have been through the ringer with their health issues and yet managed to come out on the other side. You can always visit us at functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com, but for now, here is today's episode. All right. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Health Detective Podcast by Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. My name is Evan Transu, aka Detective Ev, and I will host for today's show, episode number 470, the Health Detective Podcast. We're far along here, especially this week, it seems like. I always feel bad to some degree for our audio audience because you guys are just hearing this always on the same schedule, whereas YouTube is fun. You know, sometimes we take a few weeks off in December, and then we got, like this week was 4 podcasts, and I get the privilege of interviewing awesome people every single day for the most part. So definitely feels like we're moving quickly. We'll have something amazing for you guys on episode 500, that's for sure. With that said, I'll do some quick announcements. I'll try to keep this as concise as possible. One thing that is coming up is our HSU guest on Saturday, January 10th, is going to be Robbie Besner. So that's the founder of Therasage, if you guys have ever heard of that. And if you haven't, you're going to want to. So HSU, or Health Space Unmasked, is a free event that we do the first Saturday of each month. And no, I have not lost my mind. I know that January 10th is not the first Saturday, but we figured we couldn't get you guys right after New Year's. So we did it the second Saturday this time. But we will be back to our normally scheduled first Saturdays coming February. And the person that you're going to be talking to today just might happen to be involved in one of those first Saturday Health Space Unmasks that will be coming up soon. So make sure you go to fdntraining.com/HSU live. That's fdntraining.com/HSU live. HSU is awesome. It's a free event. It's about 2 hours, and it's kind of like getting to sit in on one conference talk without having to ever leave your couch or wherever you're at. So we usually have the presenter speak for about an hour. It usually provokes a bunch of questions. So we have a very long Q&A. They'll always offer something that they do or don't do, but I always want to be clear for people that haven't been there. And in fact, if you have been there and you're already watching, just drop a I like it in the chat or something if you've been to HSU and do enjoy it. It's not a giant sales pitch or anything like that. It's a value-based thing where we also have the guests share what they offer. And if I'm being honest, most of the time our audience is asking what they offer prior to us even getting to that part of the presentation. So I'm excited to be able to do that with you guys. There's one other thing that I need to share that I did not give our lovely Tracy a link for, so you can see how I do this stuff off the cuff. This is the disadvantage of recording these live. If I screw up, I realize in real time. So Tracy, I'll message you in a second for what that is, and we'll shout that out at the end. So let's get to our guest for now, though. We are talking to Dr. Navaz Habib. I got to meet him actually in person at the V.A.G.U.S conference in October of this past year. So if one of you guys is watching thinking, wait, I know this dude. Did I hear him speak before? It's probably because you were at V.A.G.U.S, or maybe you own one of his books, because we just discovered that off air. Tracy, our podcast, like kind of admin and producer here, she realized that she owns one of his books and loved it. So I thought that was kind of cool. So Dr. Navaz Habib, aka the Vagus Nerve Doc, is a best-selling author of 2 books, Activate Your Vagus Nerve and also Upgrade Your Vagus Nerve. And he's the host of the Health Upgrade podcast. After using functional medicine to overcome his own health challenges, Dr. Habib built Health Upgraded, an online health program implementing his Vagus protocol to guide patients and professionals to enhance their health by unlocking the healing power of the vagus nerve to reduce the effects of stress and inflammation. Welcome to the show, my friend. Thank you for not only spending this time with us, but for doing our HSU next month, I believe it is.
I'm so excited, over the moon to be a part of this with you. Thank you for having me, Ev.
Cool. So this is one of those topics, and I think you get this, so I mean this in a good way. It's like when we talk about the vagus nerve, if you don't go out and search for it sometimes, I find that it's almost like this topic that people that share it sometimes, not you, but sometimes provide the evidence for. So it sounds like this thing that's like, oh wait, I activate this nerve and somehow my body ends up in a healing state. I can understand, like if I explain this to my dad, for example, God bless him, he's going to think that this is woo. But then when we look into the data about this, it's like, no, this is actually pretty profound. So I'd like to start today, well, actually with the same question that we start with everyone, because I don't want to skip this over since you do have a health journey. So we will start with defining the vagus nerve. I'm guessing it's a part of your healing journey. But even prior to that, just so I don't get ahead of myself. I would like to know, if you don't mind sharing, what were your health symptoms and when did they begin for you?
My health journey started pretty young, actually. So after I became a lifeguard, which is really funny, I loved swimming for a long time, but that activity for me was, I realize now, was very health promoting. And once I became a lifeguard, I actually stopped swimming, which is the weirdest but most common thing that occurs. And something happened with stress levels, with lifestyle, with like just overall stress of trying to get through high school and get into university, that my health really started to deteriorate. Primarily a metabolic style health challenge. I got to a point in university where I weighed 250 pounds, I had high blood pressure, I was borderline diabetic. I went in to see the doctor, and the doctor said, just start running. And I was like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about. I'm not going to start running. And she wanted to put me on blood pressure medication and wanted to get me um, all these different medications. My blood sugar was borderline high. I had all these symptoms that somebody in their 40s, 50s, 60s shouldn't have, and I had them in my 20s. And these were signs that something was not working correctly. I always knew I wanted to be in some form of healthcare or health support, whether it was med school or chiropractic, but chiropractic really called my name. And once I started to work with a couple chiropractors, I started to learn about this idea of creating health. And I went through chiropractic college still dealing with a lot of these same health challenges. I was still significantly overweight. I still had a lot of these health challenges. And I would watch my friends, some of them were starting to work out and they were getting stronger and fitter. And it just didn't click for me. I was learning about what it meant to create health, but I wasn't implementing it, wasn't putting it together for myself. And it was on my first anniversary with my wife, which was a couple of years after I graduated from chiropractic college, where we decided that it was time to make some changes because ultimately we wanted to start a family at some point, and we knew that genetically and from our family histories, we didn't have the healthiest family histories. We knew that the genetics were going to be passed down. We wanted to do everything in our power to create health for ourselves so that we could pass on good, healthy habits to the next generation so they wouldn't be with the same health challenges. And it was on that first anniversary, I remember it very distinctly, where we were sitting, we're in a restaurant, and we're talking about this, and we're saying, we want to create health for our future family. And that started the decision to begin implementing positive changes. Lo and behold, a chance encounter. I was working at a chiropractic clinic in Mississauga here in the Toronto area, and a gentleman walks into the office, and he lives in the condo building upstairs from the office that I'm in. This was a friend's clinic that I was working in, not my own, and it was a chance encounter because it was the one evening a week where I'm at that clinic, and I was standing in a position where I'm rarely ever standing, watching people come in. This gentleman walked in. He said that his wife had been in a car accident, that she needed chiropractic care, that he himself was a chiropractor, but he didn't practice that way anymore. And for me, that was kind of this like, what else does a chiropractor do other than, dust and soft tissue therapy and a little bit of rehab? And he said, I practice functional medicine. And that was for me kind of the moment where everything changed. The crazy, that gentleman was Sachin Patel, who
Okay.
FDN knows very well. So I live 20 minutes from Sachin. He and I connected, and this was at the beginning of Sachin becoming, who he is now, Sachin Patel. And he was starting off the Living Proof Institute in Toronto, and it was a perfect chance encounter for me to learn from one of the masters in this field. He became a mentor, he became a great friend, and I actually started working with him at the Living Proof Institute. And during that initial journey, that's where my health completely transformed. I ended up losing about 75 pounds. I had every single one of my health markers come back in close to optimal, if not optimal zone. And just my energy went through the roof. I finally kind of started to feel what my body was supposed to feel overall. And I didn't realize, because you get so used to being bogged down all the time, that you didn't realize you were supposed to have so much more energy, and you're supposed to spring out of bed ready to go, and you're your body is meant to feel good and capable. And this was something that I was finally experiencing. That was the initial steps in my health journey. And it was in working with Sachin, it was in working with all of these clients at the Living Proof Institute that really got me to understand that we are living in an inflamed state. And that's the general consensus issue, is this constant chronic inflammatory issue. And it was a lot of my past work in understanding that we have a nervous system that's built to control inflammation. And it's the vagus nerve that plays a massive role in enabling that process to occur, that led me to go down this path of let's work to optimize and share and educate people on how to improve their vagus nerve so they can optimize their health. And that was kind of, in a nutshell, that almost 10-minute nutshell, my journey.
No, I told you before. I'm here to hear from the guests, so I love that. And you talk about chance encounters, man. Holy cow, doesn't get much better than that. It's funny too, because when you said Toronto, like my mind just went there, because I'm thinking chiropractor Toronto, so my mind associated it. And then you hit me with that. I'm like, okay, yeah that's about as lucky. For those that don't know Sachin, definitely check him out. Amazing guy. If I'm not mistaken, and this is insane, I think he has the most referrals to the FDN program out of anyone. That it's like over 50.
I can attest to that, no question.
So like, holy cow, because it's not a cheap program, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's worth it, but it's not something that you just send someone for a $20 product. So really amazing guy, and we appreciate him for sure as well. And now doubly appreciate him, because look at this. So can I ask one thing? And I don't want to prevent us from getting to the main topic today. I have a fascination with people's stories and the mindsets that they go through at the time. So this is not from a place of judgment. It's actually because I've been through the exact same thing. So I'm curious about this. Did you ever find that there was a stress in the back of your mind from maybe a lack of congruency? Like, you were learning about chiropractic, you were doing it, but like you said, you weren't necessarily practicing yet. And I find that when we have those inconsistencies in our identity versus our actions, that can create a lot of stress. It certainly does for me. It doesn't last long. So I see you nodding. So were you experiencing that at the time?
100%, and without truly realizing that I was. I think that was the biggest thing for me over the last little while, learning about what kind of my self-identity truly was, and where I'm meant to be and how I'm meant to serve the world. And there was absolutely an incongruency, and that incongruency had everything to do with the fact that I was learning it, but I wasn't aware of how to implement. And I wasn't aware of the fact that my self-image and how I saw myself is the strongest predictor of my ability to live that life and to identify and to then implement those pieces into my day-to-day life. And if you see yourself as sick, you're going to remain sick. And if you start to see yourself as healthy, you're going to start making changes. And it's the same idea with abundance. It's the same idea with financial wealth. How you see yourself, the image that you've created, the story you tell yourself about who you are, truly is that goal of creating this congruency between how you're living and what you're believing or feeling about yourself. So 100%, without a doubt, that is the single biggest stressor that was holding me back early on, was that lack of congruency.
Well, okay, thanks for humoring me on that and going there with me. It's like, I don't think there's any faster way to build genuine self-confidence either. Like, self-confidence for me doesn't come from being perfect in any area. And listen, by the way, I'd love to be 6'4", have a perfectly chiseled jaw and wide shoulders and a nice set of abs. I think that might help. But we've met people like that still are some of the most timid individuals in the room, right? They might be physically beautiful or handsome, but they're still timid, and you wonder why. And I'm not an expert on that. I'm not saying it's the only reason, but I do believe one of the things that happens is when we have these ideas of what we should be doing, and they could be false, they could be good. That's a whole separate podcast. But if we have these ideas of what we should be doing and we're not doing it, I think that's, in my experience, one of the fastest ways to shatter my self-confidence. Versus for me, if I say I'm going to do something and I consistently do it, my self-confidence goes through the roof. And it doesn't have to be profound. I think people think you need these incredible accolades to have self-confidence. It's like, well, if I told myself, Ev, you're going to read 5 pages a day. That's it. You're just going to read 5 pages a day. And I'm doing that consistently. That builds that self-confidence. It also allows for more positive habits. I think that kind of has a stacking effect. But yeah, I was just wondering, because I figured that had to be kind of tough, actually, mentally. to be practicing this, knowing that you wanted something different and just not yet able to implement it. So I'm so glad that this happened where you were able to do it eventually.
Yeah, no question about it. It when you start to live in alignment with what you realize you should be doing and you implement. And one of my other colleagues at the Living Proof Institute, his name is Ricky Brar, who I'm pretty sure FDN people know pretty well. Ricky has this idea that I've implemented into my life, and that is having a few non-negotiable rules about how you live, the things that you're going to complete on a daily basis. And so I'm all about, like, when you're creating these initial changes, you want to have 3 non-negotiable things that you're going to complete on a daily basis. For me, that's become such an important piece of how I create my day and how I implement. And so it's at minimum 3 to 4 days of working out at the gym. It's at minimum an hour without my phone at bedtime. It's at minimum getting up and being with my kids for 20 minutes at some point during the day, one-on-one, right? So that, for me, those are my non-negotiable daily practices. And when I fall out of congruency with those, that's where the challenges start to come up. And then that's where the stress levels pop up. And funny enough, that's where the vagus nerve dysfunction starts to pop up as well. So living in congruency plays a huge role in how you show up within your autonomic nervous system. And that's where a lot of health challenges can come up. We tend to forget about the importance of your psychology in creating true health and how you think and how you feel. And those are so overlooked, but so important. And the whole polyvagal theory was built on this entire concept. And for those who don't know, we can definitely jump into what that is. But I'll let you direct and let's go.
Thank you. I was about to say it's a perfect segue. Again, I appreciate you humoring me on some of the more story side, but let's break this down, because here's the only problem sometimes, that we have brand new FDNs coming in. Some of them are coming into this functional world for the first time. So we'll start with a little more simple, and then I'm sure we can get more advanced. So just for those that are not fully aware yet of the vagus nerve, what it is, what the main functions are, I'd love to just start with that, please, if we could just define this a little bit.
The vagus nerve is the parasympathetic branch of the autonomic nervous system. So we've got a system of control over processes that happen within our body called the autonomic nervous system. It's the brain's way of identifying what's happening in the body, getting that information up, processing it, and then controlling it and sending it down without our conscious control, without needing to consciously know what's happening within the body. So I don't consciously keep track of beating my heart. I don't consciously keep track of my liver running through its cytochrome P450s and through the multiple stages of detoxification and clearing it out. I'm not consciously thinking about peristaltic motion within my intestinal tract, but those things are all happening. So we've got 2 branches within this autonomic nervous system. We have the sympathetic nervous system, which we all kind of know as the fight or flight system. But in reality, we want to be able to enter that zone as necessary, right? We want to be able to enter a sympathetic state because that's where stuff gets done. But we want to be able to come out of that sympathetic state into a parasympathetic state, which is what we know as the rest, digest, and I've added recover state. We cannot heal when we're stuck in a sympathetic state. We cannot heal when our bodies are stuck in fight or flight, because the signals that are being sent through those sympathetic nerves is one of turn on, activate the immune system into a protective survival-based mechanism, include more inflammation, provide more of an inflammatory process. And it's done so when controlled very positively, right? We want to have a good, solid sympathetic nervous system, but we want to be able to, and the analogy I like to use is the sympathetic nervous system is like the accelerator in the body. We want to be able to use the accelerator to get places, but we also need to have control over that. And that is the brakes. And that's the parasympathetic nervous system, which the most of the parasympathetic signals in the body by a long shot are actually passed through the vagus nerve. Now we like to call it the vagus nerve. We have 2. We have one on each side, a right side and left side, in the cervical trunks. We also they have branches up to the ears. just a very small component, somewhere between 300 and 900 fibers of the vagus nerve go to the auricular branch, which is towards the ear, and that's just to the skin of the ear. But we have between 120,000 and 200,000 fibers that then go down into the cervical trunks. The cervical trunks continue on down, and these are the only cranial nerves. So the vagus nerves are the 10th of 12 pairs of cranial nerves. It's number 10. And it comes out, and it's the only one that leaves the cranial cavity. The other 11 branches of cranial nerves stay within the head. This is the only one that leaves, so it's unique, and that's really what drew my attention to it. It's just that it's unique, and it doesn't run within the spine. It actually runs in the neck alongside your carotid artery and jugular vein. So it runs in this tissue sac called the carotid sheath, which is a protective tissue sac that is literally bringing the blood flow to your brain and the blood flow from your brain up and down. But the vagus nerve is the only other structure within that area in the neck. It then comes down into the thorax area, into the chest, and it has branches to the esophagus, the stomach, or excuse me, the heart, the lungs. Essentially, every area within the thorax is directly innervated by the two branches of the vagus nerve that are coursing together. And then it goes down. It doesn't innervate the diaphragm directly, but it passes through the diaphragm into the abdomen, where it connects to virtually every single organ in the body. The vagus nerve has a direct physical connection to every single visceral organ in your body, except for the spleen, in which it has an indirect and very important connection. But every single other organ, the pancreas, the gallbladder, the liver, the small intestine, the large intestine, the stomach, you name it, there is a direct physical connection of the vagus nerve to that organ. That's really kind of from a macro anatomical structure, that's really what the vagus nerve and the autonomic nervous system components are.
Okay, so one of the things that you hear all the time, and I mean, I know even with your own books, right, this happens, right? We talk about activating. That's like, it's very common. You could look that up on Google and you'd see those terms being used. And then what happens for someone like me, and I'm not invalidating any of these things. I have no idea if this actually works or doesn't work, but I'll hear about general tips in like a 60-second short on YouTube or Instagram, and they're like, gargle, listen to flowing water, do this form of breathing. Again, all of it might be great, but I think no one's ever put it into some concise, practical thing for me. And especially the way my mind works, it's not every FDN, but a lot of our FDNs, the reason we're attracted to this program is because there's data. We like to know, all right, what do I need to do? And I know that you can't think about that. You can't think about everything in life that way, but it is kind of nice when there's almost a protocol or something. And you seem to be the person for that, which is great. So what I would like to know from you is you have this protocol for, I guess, activating your vagus nerve. I'd love to know more about that and how you actually came up with it. Because again, I hear all these separate, seemingly disconnected tips from people. So I'd love to know how you came up with your protocol and what it entails.
Ultimately, there is one way to activate the vagus nerve. It all comes down to one particular practice, and it is the simplest, most natural, most free thing in the world, and that is the breath. And how you breathe dictates whether you're pushing your body from a sympathetic state or into a parasympathetic state. Your breath pattern and the practices around your breath pattern are going to then dictate if I'm going to turn on the sympathetics more or if I'm going to turn on the vagus nerve and the parasympathetics more. The breath is the key, and everything is stacked on top of this foundation of the breath. The breath is the key thing here. So just very simply think of these moments in time where something happened, right? You hear a loud bang, right? What's going to happen? Your immediate reaction generally is going to be, oh my goodness, let me protect myself because I don't know what's happening. And your body enters what's called a survival mode because I need to look around and make sure that there's nothing threatening my survival right now. So your body automatically will shift in that moment into a sympathetic state. So you're going to go fists up, you're going to tighten up, your eyes are going to dilate, your pupils are dilating so you can see all around, make sure that you have clear vision of everything in and around you locally. But what do you do with your breath? You go, An immediate, quick inhale, probably through your mouth, and it's an immediate hold. Breathe in, and oh my goodness, what's happening? It's the same idea if anybody's ever done a cold plunge. The first, when you get in the cold plunge, that first reaction is, oh my God, what am I doing here? This is going to kill me. And then you start to control your breath to teach your body to shift. And so that initial breath in is a shift towards sympathetic. But once you realize that that loud noise or that cold plunge that you've gotten into is not that bad, and you start to tell yourself through conditioning, through practice, through training, that this thing is not a threat to your survival, you immediately give yourself a sigh of relief. You go, and you exhale. This micro change of inhale, exhale is the first kind of basic level of the autonomic shift between sympathetics with the accelerator and parasympathetics with the brakes. This is kind of the basic that we need to know. But as we do that sigh of relief, the pupils will constrict, the tightness, the tension will start to go away. And as you control that breath and you teach your body to enter that parasympathetic state by activating your vagus nerve through control of your breath, that's what's going to start to turn the vagus nerve on and get your body to have these signals of parasympathetic innervation to those organs. So what we're able to then do is reduce inflammatory processes through acetylcholine getting to these immune cells and reducing the inflammatory activation that's occurring. Mm-hmm. We're going to be able to decrease the stress level that somebody is experiencing acutely in that moment. So there's 3 specific characteristics of the breath that need to be implemented to shift between sympathetic and parasympathetic. Number 1, we need to breathe through our nose. Our nose is our breathing tube. Our mouth is our eating tube. We don't have teeth in our nose. We don't have nose hairs in our mouth. We need to breathe through our nose. Nasal breathing is key. So number 1, breathe through your nose. I have a deviated septum. This is one of the things that I've been contending with for a while. Surgery is on the table. We're trying to figure out what the best route for me is. I have an airway dentist friend who I'm working with, trying to figure out if there's tools that you can utilize to help shift things around so that you can breathe through your nose more easily. But nasal breathing is number 1. One of the most important things that you can do is to breathe through your nose. Number 2, we want to use our diaphragm as the primary breathing muscle. The diaphragm is this huge arch dome muscle that separates the thorax, the chest area, from the belly, the abdomen. The vagus nerve doesn't innervate the diaphragm. It's the phrenic nerve that does, to actually create the contraction relaxation. But when you do that, when you shift towards a diaphragmatic breathing pattern, what you're doing is you're teaching your body to go into parasympathetic state, because most people are using accessory breathing muscles to breathe all the time. So hands up if you've ever had tight traps or tight rhomboids and upper back muscles. And it's not just because you have terrible posture because you're sitting here like this on your cell phone or you're sitting here like this on your computer. Yes, those are playing a massive role. But don't forget that it also has to do with, are you using the correct muscles for breathing? These are secondary muscles up here in your neck, shoulder, upper back. So many people are dealing with these tight muscles. Your breath pattern is likely pushed towards a chest-based and upper back breathing pattern. Those are not the primary drivers of the breath. It's the diaphragm. So how do you know you're doing this? 1 hand on the chest, 1 hand on the belly, and take 3 breaths. And ideally, you feel less movement on the chest and more movement on the belly. It should be, your belly should be coming out with an inhale and going in with an exhale. Sometimes people are taught from a very early age that don't show your belly shouldn't be moving. And we've actually trained ourselves out of diaphragmatic breathing. We've trained ourselves out of belly breathing. Sadly, this is particularly true for females. And so this is something that a lot more females need to work on, is their belly breathing practices and the story they're talking about in their minds about that breathing practice. So this is something that I'm a fan of, working with people in the safety and security of their homes to shift towards a belly-based breathing pattern first. Okay. The third thing, so we've talked nasal, we've talked diaphragmatic. The third piece of the puzzle on your breath is longer exhales. So I had you, when that loud bang occurred, we went into an inhale. And when we realized it's not a big deal, that sound or that threat to our survival was no longer there, we exhaled. As we inhale, we're pushing the accelerator and we're actually mildly entering the sympathetic state. Very slightly, but we are. And every single time we exhale, we're shifting towards a parasympathetic, vagally activated state. And we're constantly shifting between these two states, sympathetic and parasympathetic, with every breath that we take. If we are spending more time on the inhale than we are on the exhale, we're shifting more towards the sympathetic side of things. We're shifting more towards the fight or flight side of things. When we turn the time and shift the time towards a longer exhale, we're spending more time activating the parasympathetic nerves. And so what we need to do is learn to practice in such a way that shifts our breathing pattern from more inhale time to more exhale time, and have a longer exhale than inhale. So very simple practice: 3 seconds in, 6 seconds out, or 3 seconds in, 5 seconds out. Something very simple like that can really help to shift things around and can happen really rapidly. Like for people that do a breathing practice in the middle of a stressor, you put a hand on your chest, you put a hand on your belly, and you take 3 deep belly breaths and focus on long exhale. You'll notice in just 3 breaths that you feel clearer, that you're able to make a better decision, not react, but to rather respond effectively and just show up better in these stressful circumstances. So that breath pattern needs to be nasal, diaphragmatic, longer exhales. Now, because the breath is so foundational to all of this, I said we need to build a protocol around this, because it needs to be something that's easy for people to understand, but also easy for them to identify where the issues lie. And so I created the V.A.G.U.S protocol. So V stands for validate. It's completely aligned with FDN completely. Mm-hmm. Test, don't guess, know what's actually happening. Now, a test can be as simple as putting a hand on your chest and a hand on your belly and validating where the breath is. Am I breathing more with my chest, or am I breathing more with my belly? That is an objective measurement. Okay. As subjective as it is to you doing it, it's an objective measurement that you should be able to feel and you can change. So validate what your breathing pattern is. One of my favorite validation tools when it comes to the breath specifically is called BOLT score, body oxygen level test. And this is something that you can do easily at home for free, no cost, no nothing. You just turn on a timer. You do kind of normal breathing 3 times, and then you exhale completely, and you hold the exhale, and you start the timer immediately upon beginning that exhale. And then you count on the timer how many seconds it takes until you feel the first need to take a new breath. The longer that time, the better your body is at being efficient with oxygen carbon dioxide levels. Specifically, your carbon dioxide tolerance, your CO2 tolerance is up. BOLT score is a very simple measurement that you can do to identify what your breathing efficiency is. And so I really love that as a free, easy tool that anybody can implement. And measuring your BOLT score, you can change it in a week to 2 weeks pretty significantly when you start to implement proper breathing practices. And so I really like that. For those who are already doing BOLT score or are interested in this, anything under 20 seconds tells us that we really need to work on your breathing efficiencies. 20 to 30 is kind of moderate. You're doing all right. But 30 plus seconds, we're really looking at improved overall CO2 tolerance and improved overall breath capabilities. Okay. Yeah, go for it.
I'm sorry. I have a million follow-ups, but one of the ones, as stupid as this might seem, I'm curious about this. With the mouth breathing in particular versus the nasal breathing, I would totally back you on intuitively. That makes sense. Yes, I do agree that even I just feel better breathing nasally and then exhaling through my mouth. And it really isn't a huge difference for me, but in terms of the exhale, but definitely the inhale makes a difference. I'm curious, is there science on what is actually happening in our nervous system if I just kept taking breaths via my mouth versus my nose?
The best source of data on this is actually been documented by what's his name? James. The name is escaping me.
Oh, because that book,
Breath.
Breath, right?
Breath, yes.
I know what you're talking about.
James Nestor. What he did, for those who haven't read the book, was he had plugs put into his nose, which wouldn't allow him to breathe through his nose at all. And he was forced to breathe through his mouth for, I believe it was a week or 2 weeks. And what he found was his blood pressure was significantly higher. His blood sugar actually went up slightly. And he had a lot more stress and just was incapable of handling a lot of data points. And I think we don't want everybody to go out and do this, but nose hairs are filters. They're filtering particulate matter. The air, as it enters the nasal passage, goes into the sinuses, which humidify and warm the air. That air and that oxygen then go down the trachea into the lungs, and because it's warmer, more humidified, we're actually able to produce that gas exchange far more easily. What we're doing is we're creating ease when we breathe through our breathing tube, which is our nose. On the exhale, it matters less. You're absolutely right. Inhale through the nose for sure, where possible. Like, you can't speak while you're breathing through your nose, right? You have to breathe through your mouth, particularly on exhale while you're exhaling or speaking. So when we are not speaking, in and out through the nose is kind of an ideal perspective, because it actually, more than anything, slows the entire process down. And as we slow the breath rate down, we increase efficiency and we decrease stress. So at the end of a workout, we're all kind of huffing, puffing, panting, whether it's cardio or strength, whatever. That's our body grasping for more oxygen because we're under stress, because the carbon dioxide level is high and the oxygen level is low. What we're trying to do is gather volume, and oftentimes we'll end up breathing through our mouth. But if you're super, super efficient, you're not going to become breathless, and you're not going to go into zone 2 as easily, and you're not going to go into zone 3 as easily, and your efficiencies of overall metabolic oxidative function are going to significantly increase when you become really good at mouth, or at nasal breathing, not at mouth breathing, blocking mouth breathing. So data
that's cool
point,
that he did
that's
that
huge.
and put himself out there for us. Yeah, again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that to our audience, just like you had said, but it would be, it's probably only a matter of time before there's some large scale study where they do that with people for a week or two. And that's the other thing, the fact that was for such a short period of time. My head as an FDN, I'm thinking about, when I was exposed to mold unknowingly, I started to breathe a lot more through in fact, I'd wake up at night because my nose was so clogged from, again, the mold that we didn't know was there at the time. Chronic sinusitis, I feel like deviated septums. I don't know if that was common for our ancestors, but I feel like everyone and their brother has one now. So there's so many things that are leading people to do that even more today. And it's like, this is something that can be retrained. I also, on this podcast, I've shared many times, and I always thought it was because of the meditation itself, but now I'm really starting to think, well, a huge part of meditation is breath. One of the times that I felt my ultimate best, and I still do feel pretty good, thank God, today, but I was religious with 20 to 30 minutes of visualization before bed and about 10 to 15 minutes of it when I woke up. Now, this was actually because I was into, just fun woo-woo stuff. I was trying to visualize certain things that I had for goals. I wasn't doing this for health reasons. But when I look back, it's like, well, I perfected sleep basically because I had the perfect wind down routine. There was nothing going on. I'm listening to the beta waves or whatever the heck it was on those meditations. I'm breathing perfectly. It's like, well, no wonder I felt amazing. It was a great way to start and end my day. And I'm wondering now, like, how much of that was because I was controlling my breath very strictly for those entire sessions. So even if I just looked at the cumulative thing, forget the fact that it was when I woke up and went to bed, I spent about 45 minutes of every day for several years straight, perfectly controlling my breath in a way that you're similar to what you're recommending here. Maybe that was why. Maybe I got to get back into this.
I think the breath control piece is one that we've completely missed out on for a long period of time. And I actually, just before this call, got off a podcast recording with a friend of mine, Dr. Shivani Gupta, who has a book coming out. And we talked about pranayama, which I don't know if people understand what this is. We tend to, when you hear pranayama, you think yoga, right? It's the breathing component of yoga. Prana means life force, and yama means control. And breath is the mechanism by which you can control your life force, to build life force, to build chi. It's this idea from an Eastern medicine perspective that your vitality and your energy come from your ability to control and activate this particular breath pattern, or through this breath pattern. So for me, that is just how strong breath control is in creating this idea of vitality, of real health. And that's just how important the breath is. So no doubt in my mind, because you had that religious practice of, breath control through a period of time, particularly aligned with the circadian rhythm and your sleep patterns, no question in my mind that was why you were doing as well as you were.
Yeah, and I think, see, I gotta reflect a little bit after the podcast, and I don't. It's not to say that I'm not listening to the guests. I'm very intently listening to my guests. It's the problem is I put this in the middle of the workday, right? Because this is a job still. So then I go to the next meeting right after this, and I'll go to the next meeting after that, and I don't reflect on it as much as I'd like, because I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, yeah, why did I even stop that? I'm like, oh, I met my wife. And then, you start sleeping in the same bed. And it's not that she was never opposed to any of that stuff, but it was a little bit different when, a lot of my visualizations, I'd set up a whole, I don't know how many people are into this. It might sound incredibly strange if you don't know about this stuff, but you're basically taught to know, visualize as things that you want in life. So I had this whole audio that I recorded myself, Dr. Habib, which had career goals, mating goals, right? Like trying to find someone that had my ideal characteristics, all these things. So that seemed a little bit weird and counterintuitive to listen to if you're with your wife then. You're not
A
gonna
little
be
bit. Yeah, exactly. You don't have more mating goals while you're with
Yeah,
your
right,
wife.
right. Yes. I'm definitely not allowed to, that's for sure. I'm just being funny. But when I just could have re-recorded it or done something like that, but I'm like, oh yeah, I lost this about 4 years ago, roughly speaking. That's when I stopped doing that, and there's no reason that I can't continue it now. So I'm going to make sure I actually take some time to reflect on this today. So thank you, seriously. Now, I want to ask a follow-up too about the protocol and stuff, and just the science that we know behind this. So you had mentioned in your explanation of the protocol, I heard acetylcholine at one point, and I heard
Yes.
reduction, in inflammation. So I'm guessing that you're not just pulling that out of nowhere. That was quite specific. So when we do these breathing practices, is that instantly reducing inflammation? Is it a cumulative effect? Maybe it's both. I'd love to know more about that.
It's very difficult to measure inflammation reduction in a very acute circumstance.
Sure.
So I can't say with absolute evidence and proof in the research showing that acutely inflammation is reduced with strong breathing practices. I can say with a very, very high degree of confidence that retraining this autonomic flexibility of being able to go between sympathetic, parasympathetic through breath patterning has a very profound, very strong effect on lowering inflammation without question. And the vagus nerve is the pathway by which it does so. So when we control the breath, the vagus nerve is able to turn on more effectively. We increase what's called vagal tone, which I like to just consider simply the signaling capability of the nerve. The nerve becomes stronger, thicker, better insulation. It's just a wire that's working more effectively. That wire, when it's working effectively, sends signals of acetylcholine. So acetylcholine is the only neurotransmitter utilized by the vagus nerve, period. And what it does is it links, specifically in this case of inflammation reduction, to the immune cells that are located in every cell of or every organ of the body. These are the tissue resident macrophages in particular that are present in every organ. So in the brain, they're the microglial cells, which, as you know, numerous people are talking about just how important these microglial cells are. We're talking about the Kupffer cells in the liver, the alveolar macrophages in the lungs, the Langerhans cells in the skin, the intestinal macrophages in the entirety of the intestine. These immune cells need a level of control, right? Because if we're constantly on the accelerator, we're constantly pushing towards this sympathetic fight or flight side of things, inflammation is going to come up and we're not controlling it. And so acetylcholine comes in and it binds to the alpha 7 nicotinic acetylcholine receptor that's present on every single immune cell in the body. And numerous other cells have these acetylcholine receptors as well. But this particular one, when it turns on, it activates the JAK2 STAT3 pathway, and it activates the my goodness, the NRF2 pathway. And so what
I'm
we're
already
doing,
impressed. Don't worry, even if you forget one.
what we're doing is we're going and turning on anti-inflammatory signals that are happening in those nuclear. We're turning on the genes to turn off the inflammation, basically, and so we stop releasing these inflammatory cytokines, the TNF alpha, IL-1, IL-6. Right? These inflammatory cytokines are the signaling pathways that produce more and more inflammation. When we shut them off through the vagus nerve, through vagus nerve activation stimulation, in a cumulative and long-standing pattern, we can actively see reductions in these cytokine levels. So these inflammatory cytokines decrease, and the anti-inflammatory cytokines, these are the signals of let's heal, let's rebuild, let's support the growth of these hormones or of these organs. BDNF is going to pop up, right? Growth hormone is going to increase. And that happens only when we enter a parasympathetic state, only when the vagus nerve is activated effectively.
Okay, so at least right now, and I don't want to oversimplify it, but it sounds like it's fair to say we know that this is clearly beneficial. Further research will probably prove how much more beneficial it is as people continue to do this, as we have studies directly around this. Like, again, James Nestor doing that by himself, the opposite way, if you will, was interesting, but we need a lot of people to do this just to see how bad one is and how great the other is. But I love anything that doesn't seem to be harmful. I can't imagine this harming me in any way, and it has a lot of benefit. And I think maybe this is the disconnect sometimes around this conversation, because you provided tons of science, and I mean the things that you're listing off, right? It's like obvious that you've done your research into this and spent a lot of time with it, but it is one of those things yet where it's not like we're not prescribing a supplement protocol here where it's like, hey, if you take XYZ vitamin for 30 days, this is the increase that you expect to see. Or like creatine, for example, would be an easy one. If you take creatine for 30 days, 5 grams a day, you're going to see about this increase in your strength, about this increase in your endurance. And we know that very well. So it doesn't sound like we're quite there yet. But yes, my gut tells me it's very obvious that we will see probably profound benefits, ones that we can't even, I don't think the average person would even imagine it yet. I don't think I'd imagine it, how good it can be yet. So that's kind of cool. Can I ask, because you've probably seen some anecdotes from this, just people telling you, hey, I've read your book, done your stuff, and this is what happened to me. So, we're not saying that this is going to happen to you guys if you're listening in the audience, but I would like to know, have you heard any cool stories from people that have implemented your protocol as to what has happened to their health, either physical, mental, or anything in between?
Yeah, absolutely. There are numerous stories. I've worked with people that have overcome cancer. I've worked with clients that have overcome diabetes and obesity. I've worked with clients that have overcome autoimmune conditions. The protocol, which I didn't really dig into completely with you, but I'll do so really quickly. So sure. V stands for validate, which allows us to understand where we stand and where we want to go and then see our progress. A stands for activate, which is, are you doing the breathing practices? Are you stacking on top of those breathing practices with humming, chanting, gargling, singing, cold plunge, sauna, whatever kind of works for you? If you want to, do you want to add in some sort of vagus nerve stimulation tool, which has been shown to be really effective as kind of that anchor point and a nice adjunct stimulant to the vagus nerve directly using things like electricity or ultrasound? G stands for gut-brain immune optimization, which goes along the lines of everything FDN teaches: optimizing nutrition, optimizing brain function, optimizing immunometabolism. Then we get into U, which is unburden. And this is a thing that I think is missed out a lot more, and that's the psychology side of things. This is affecting the psychological potential of trauma in your past, potential of, were you the victim of a crime? Did you have a great relationship with your parents? Was there instances of trauma that occurred in school, right? These implemented, we want to look at, we're not going to be able to change those habits or those instances in your life, but can you reframe them in your mind and tell yourself a different story about it? Can you take it away from being a burden on you and rather it becoming the positive or the instant that taught you something really cool? And then S is sustain. What are the things that you can do to create these new habits and implement these habits for long-term health? So validate, activate, gut-brain immune optimization, unburden, and sustain, V.A.G.U.S, the V.A.G.U.S protocol. So, in terms of case studies, I've in the second book I had more case studies, which is upgrade your
Sure.
vagus nerve, and one of my favorite ones that I'll talk about from there had to do with a client who had Parkinson's, and he was diagnosed with Parkinson's 13 years before seeing me. Um, when his wife is a holistic nutritionist, did everything that she knew to do from a nutrition, lifestyle, supplementation standpoint, and we added vagus nerve stimulation into a lot of what they were already doing. So they were very well on their own track, but adding some vagus nerve stimulation practices and looking to unburden what had occurred in the past. Turns out that the year prior to his initial symptomatic kind of journey, his son was involved in a very severe car accident, actually had been in the hospital for about 10 months. It was a really, really severe issue. And because his son was in the hospital, my patient, we'll call him Vlad. He was taking on this role of taking care of the family, of being the glue that held everything together. His wife was constantly taking care of their son. They had lots of other challenges that they had to deal with outside. And so he was kind of this glue holding the family together. And as soon as his son's health issues were fixed up and he wasn't dealing with these challenges as severely anymore, that's where his deterioration started. That's where his symptomatic nature began. Turns out that journey, that stress that he went through, psychological stress, not physical, not emotional,
Yeah.
not biochemical stress during that time. I'm sure there was some, but it wasn't that severe. It was this severe psychological impact of needing to be the glue for a period of time that was the final straw that led to him becoming sick. The crazy story here is that once he started doing vagus nerve stimulation, he called me and he said, I can smell my wife cooking bacon downstairs. He couldn't smell. The first symptom that he had 13 years prior was his sense of smell had gone away. 13 years later, he could smell that bacon was being cooked downstairs. And then at this point, and yeah, I have little goosebumps that are popping up here, he's smelling things 60, 70% of the time, which is pretty profound as just kind of a cool experience, a cool story. But we were able to enable that healing process to occur. And he did it. And it was just some guidance from me and some detective work that was done by me. That's my nod to you over there, Detective Ev. That once we uncovered that this was the root cause and he changed the story around what had happened there to himself, it stopped being a burden. He started activating his vagus nerve. He was already doing a lot of the gut brain immune optimization from his wife's recommendations. And all of a sudden, things started to positively shift for him. So that is probably my favorite story that I can share with you.
Thank you. And you know what's cool about this? It's like I'm not. It's not that this isn't obvious, but I wasn't thinking about this part of it. This is free.
Yeah.
This is free. Some of the best tips that I've ever heard on this podcast, 472 episodes in. Can you get morning sunlight? Can you stop blue light at night? Can you do this breathing? I mean, really, like can you stop eating at a certain time, right? Don't have a steak before you're about to go to bed, right? At least have that several hours before. They literally are some of the best things that I've ever done for my health. I think it's some of the best things that a lot of our guests have done for their health, and they happen to be the most affordable. Now, by the way, I love FDN. I love the tests. I hope you guys do all of them as soon as you can. But if you're one of those people listening that's in the trenches and feeling sick right now and not doing well, and you're like, how the heck can I get better? I promise you can run all the lab tests with us. We're going to tell you the same thing. We're still going to tell you to go out and get sunlight. We're still going to tell you to optimize your breath like the doc's talking about here. So you don't need the lab tests for that. The labs can help optimize a lot of things. I certainly think it can help accelerate your healing quite a bit when you know what your body's reacting to and if you have pathogens and all that kind of stuff. But this is free, folks. So I hope people take that to heart. Now, what's crazy is we've already been talking for about 54 minutes here. So I'll ask my last few questions. And I knew this wasn't going to be enough time today, which is why you're an HSU speaker. So remember, guys, go to fdntraining.com/HSU live. Yes, we do have a different guest coming on this Saturday. It's going to be another awesome one, Robbie Besner. But when you are signed up for our HSUs at any point, you will get the email notifications for them in the future. So also, if you're listening to this on audio, it would have passed since Robbie did his, and the next HSU would actually be Dr. Habib. So that link will always work for you guys. And once you're in there once, then you will get the notifications for our future HSU speakers. All right. So with that said, I would like to know, what can people do with you? Because you talked about working with individuals, you have your books. So this is the time I'd like you to shout out all this stuff. What do you offer and where can they get it, my friend?
The best way to start working with me, go to our website, healthupgraded.com, and you can sign up for the 10-day vagus nerve jumpstart program. And that 10-day vagus nerve jumpstart program is completely free. It's a great place to go. Oh, there's a QR code. Look at that. And what you'll be able to do is you'll join our mini course, and you'll get a new lesson every day. Mini courses, but mini stuff that is very powerful. And then we've got a full Vegas protocol course for those who are interested in joining the full membership and whatnot. We do have affiliate programs if practitioners are looking at getting their patients into this or need this as a great adjunct therapy. So reach out if that is something that you're interested in. Otherwise, follow me on Instagram at Dr. Navaz Habib, or watch the YouTube channel as well. So yeah,
cool.
Those are helpful.
Sorry that I didn't get into the chat. That was completely my fault, but also I was just saying such good stuff. I kind of wanted to let him keep doing his thing. So I see you there, Holly. Holly and I have been hanging out everywhere. We were on a live together yesterday, got podcasts. I just emailed her earlier. So thanks, Holly, for throwing some stuff in the chat. If you guys enjoyed this today, please drop a thank you. It's always great for our guest. And if you do want to ask him questions, remember, HSU is designed in such a way. This will be with him, it's going to be the first Saturday of February. So I forget the exact date offhand, but it's just the first. Thank you. The first Saturday in that month. And that is where you'll have like a full hour to ask questions on HSU, generally speaking, guys. So definitely make sure you get in for that. Now, Dr. Habib, this is almost silly sometimes because I probably can guess what you're going to say, but I've been shocked enough times. And either way, I still like to finish the podcast with this. It's the signature question on the show. And it is this: if we could give you a magic wand, you could wave it, and you can get all of our viewers to do one thing for their health. So that means you can get us to start doing one thing, or you can get us to stop doing one thing. What is that one thing that you'd get us to do?
I think the bookending your day routine idea, which you had done in the past, Evan, that you talked about, is actually the thing that I would have people do on a daily basis. My focus is on, can you actively engage in conscious positive breathing practices around the circadian rhythm? Can you set yourself up for a positive sleep and then set yourself up for a positive day, and do so through conscious controlled breath? The breath is so overlooked. You already breathe between 16 and 24,000 times per day. If you can link that up with the 10 minutes of morning sunlight that you can get every single morning for free by sitting outside on a chair where direct sunlight is coming, and pair it with that calm, controlled breath without distraction, without the chaos of the kids running around and the chaos of your life occurring, and you make that a ritual that you take on every single day at the beginning and end of your day, I can assure you your life will change for the better, for your health and for financial success and everything else. The breath and that ritual practice paired together is really the thing that I would plug in for everyone in the world.
Thank you so much for coming on today and for what you're doing. And I can't wait for